Hey guys, this is New Sensei. This is the first video in a series on how to choose your first bow. For someone completely new to archery, your understanding of a bow may be as simple as this. This is also a bow, but I'm assuming you're not looking for this. So let's go from here. Firstly, why did you choose to get into archery? Were you inspired by pop culture figures like Katniss Everdeen? Or maybe Oliver Queen? Or perhaps you want to spend time in the great outdoors and do some bow hunting? Or you might have seen the Olympic Games and you want some competition? Or maybe you're looking for a social experience, hanging out with friends and family and shooting at your club. Now, buying a bow might seem like a very simple endeavor. You go to Google, you type in archery bow, and you find the most reviewed and most popular and cheapest bow you can find. However, this isn't necessarily the best idea. While you might get a functional, usable bow, often by rushing into a purchase without doing proper research, you get improper equipment. Not only does this waste time and money, it may tarnish your first experience of archery. So before you click the buy now button and get your Samick Sage, understand that there are many types of bows you can get, and some bows may appeal to you more than others. Firstly, a special mention goes to fiberglass bows. These are often labelled as youth bows. These are very cheap, the cheapest you can find, often being under $25 or $50 for a whole set. These are usually marketed towards young kids, being a very basic design, looking like a cheap plastic toy. They can be quickly outgrown and they're not very accurate. These can be tempting for many people as an entry point, but understand that these bows offer very limited development. Another alternative is to make your own bow. While making your own wooden bow for the first time may be very daunting, many people like the idea of crafting their own PVC bow. PVC bows are very cheap. It's a great do-it-yourself entry point, and it's great for people who want to be hands-on in entering archery as a hobby. There are also traditional and primitive bows. These cover historical styles and designs which were used at some point in time, for example with the English longbow, the Japanese yumi, and traditional horse bows. There are also crossbows. Now, crossbows look really awesome, but they're often considered to be separate from archery bows because of the design and function. Modern crossbows can be used for hunting or sport target shooting, but they may be classified as a weapon in your local area and you may require a license to own them. Additionally, because of these restrictions, many clubs don't support the training of crossbows. Now we move on to the most common type of bow, the recurve bow. Recurve bows are very popular among beginners and they're used by clubs and ranges to teach new archers. Recurve bows can be one piece or takedown, meaning that they can be disassembled into separate components. They are easy to learn with and are very generic in design. There are more specialized kinds of recurve bows. For example, there are target bows, otherwise known as Olympic recurves. These bows are made from modern materials, such as aluminium or carbon. They use sights and stabilizers, and they're used in freestyle competition. There are also hunting recurves. These are usually designed to be more practical in the field, being smaller and more compact. Often these are made to be aesthetically pleasing and comfortable to handle. The other common type of bow you will find is the compound bow. Compound bows are engineered to be highly precise. They are mechanical in design with cams and very efficient limbs. They have very high velocities and they are made to be used with mechanical release aids and magnified lenses. Compound bows tend to be very popular because they're easy to pick up and use, and you can gain a lot of accuracy in a small amount of time. They also come in different variants, for target being larger, heavier and brighter, and hunting compounds, which are more compact and come in black or camouflage patterns. Because compounds and recurves are the two most common kinds of bows in the market, people are often torn between which one to choose. It's a very personal choice based on what you want to achieve in archery, and these factors may help make your decision. Compound bows are more about mechanical precision, whereas recurve bows are more about natural simplicity. Compound shooters expect consistent bullseyes, whereas recurve shooters have more variables to deal with. Compound shooters will expect immediate results. Recurve shooters can also achieve a high level of accuracy, but it takes a lot longer to achieve. Compound shooters often focus on accuracy, whereas recurve shooters often focus more on form. In the end, compound shooters will have high expectations, whereas recurve shooters have high hopes. These factors are highly personal and highly subjective, so what you choose is really up to you. Now that you have an understanding of different kinds of bows, how do you know which bow to choose? When I help people buy bows, I keep these things in mind: purpose, price, progression, and preference. Before I continue, I want to give a special mention to trad shooting. Traditional shooters are mostly separate from mainstream recurve and compounds. They have a unique appeal, and people who choose traditional bows often have a specific reason, such as historical appeal, traditional links, cultural appreciation, or just enjoying a simple traditional bow. Some bows and styles are very specialized, such as Japanese kyudo. If you want to shoot a traditional bow, it mostly depends on the style you want to shoot. Going back to picking your bow, the first question you should ask yourself is, why do I need the bow? What is your purpose, or what is your goal? Now, if you are just planning to shoot in your backyard for fun, then you won't necessarily need a high-end sporty bow. But if you're planning on shooting at the Olympic Games, then you will need a bow that will take you there. If you're going to hunt with your bow, then certain bows are better for that purpose than others. An example of this is an Olympic recurve. It's great for a target range. It's long, it's flashy, it's balanced and colorful, but these things don't make it suited for hunting. The next thing to keep in mind is your budget. How much can you spend on your bow? And you have to remember that buying a bow isn't just the bow, you have to buy the arrows and the accessories. This can make a really big difference in what equipment you have to select from. Many people start with a budget that is far too low. One of the most common questions is, what bow do you recommend that is under $100? And really, that is far too low to make a good recommendation. A basic Takedown recurve can cost up to around $200 and an entry-level compound can cost a bit more, about $400. This varies, of course, and you can cut corners by buying second-hand, but you need to budget a fair amount to get some good options for your first bow. Now, more expensive bows tend to be more specialized in their design, while cheaper bows are a bit more general purpose. Earlier I mentioned youth fiberglass bows, and you can buy fiberglass bows which are meant for adults as well. These are very cheap bows, costing around $50 for an entire kit. That includes a fiberglass bow, a really cheap finger tab, arrows, and so on. Now, these bows may be very tempting because people want to spend the least amount to get into archery. But while they can be fun to use, they're only really meant to pique interest. They're not really meant to be grown with. So they're great for a short-term fix, especially for young kids. But if you're serious about doing archery, then you should look into a more serious purchase. So while these may be tempting, try to avoid them because they won't give you a genuine experience to see if you really enjoy archery. Next question is, how long do you think you will keep the bow for? Now, bows are meant to last forever. Bows don't break unless you mishandle it or you don't take care of it. You really don't need to buy more than one bow. However, people will buy new bows for various reasons. For example, they might want better performance, there might be new features, there might be more personalization, or they just want the newest model. It is often viable to skip entry-level bows to get something that is more suited for mid-term to long-term growth. A common misconception is that you need to start from a cheap beginner bow before you go to an expensive advanced bow, and this myth is sometimes perpetuated by veteran shooters, coaches, or even shops who might freak out at the prospect of a new archer spending thousands on their first bow. And while this price tag might sound really scary, it's not actually a bad thing. The reality is that you can skip the basic bows, especially if you're already learning using club equipment or rented equipment, and especially if you've already had the chance to handle and use other people's bows, so you kind of know what you're looking for. Now, people are more often afraid of making a big purchase if they're not confident they'll stay with the sport, so the cheaper bows can be more tempting because it's less of a sacrifice in case they drop out. Additionally, budget limitations may also skew the results, so people might buy cheaper bows because that's all they can afford. Overall, if you are confident with your commitment, you can save money in the long term by investing in better quality equipment earlier and grow into a better bow sooner. Last but not least is preference. Is there a particular style that you simply have more of a liking for? Because you probably haven't used many bows, the first impressions are actually pretty good determining factors, and I call this the look and feel of your first bow. If it looks good and it feels good, buy it. Now, if you don't want something that's flashy or high-tech like a modern target bow, there's nothing wrong with going with a traditional wooden bow. Don't let other people bully you into buying a particular style of bow if that's not what you want to shoot. Buy the bow that you want to use, not what someone else tells you to get. Now that you have a better idea of different styles of bows and the factors involved in making the right choice, which bow do you go for? To make things easier, I've put together this visual diagram. This shows bow progression, with the cheaper, simpler bows on the left and the more complex, advanced and expensive bows on the right. Note that you don't have to start from the beginning. You can enter at any point in this diagram if you know what you're looking for. We've already mentioned youth fiberglass recurve bows. These are very cheap and they're alright for really young children. You may personally have come across these bows as part of a camp activity or a school program, but effectively I would suggest you skip this step. Next we have the Takedown recurve bows. These wooden models are the generic entry-level recurves, which a club will use to teach beginners. If you buy one of these bows, you can expect to spend no more than $200 on the bow itself, making it quite an affordable option. These bows look and feel like a real bow, making this a great starting point for most new archers. From here, things begin to get more specialized. Entry-level hunting recurves like the Martin Jaguar are still fairly affordable, and while they're designed for field shooting or hunting, they can be used for target shooting and backyard shooting. The design of these bows is quite visually appealing, and they can still be used as general-purpose bows. Bows high up on the hunting line include more luxurious wooden bows, or you have modern bows like the Hoyt Tiburon. These bows often contain features borrowed from target bows, being very comfortable to use, boasting more advanced features and more customization. Crossing over to the target recurve line, we come across bows like the SF Axiom Plus. A bow like this will cost around $300 to $600 depending on whether you go for the entire setup, including sights and stabilizers. A bow like this, despite being entry level, still has that sportsrized look and has the features which enable it to be useful for someone starting out in the sporting discipline. At the top end of the target recurve line, we come across brands like Hoyt and Win. In this case, the Win Reawiz Nano Max. A riser like this would cost easily over $800 to $1,000. When you factor in the rest of the bow, the limbs, the sights and the stabilizers, a complete bow may cost around $2,000 to $3,000. These bows offer the maximum in adjustment and personalization and the best in performance, perfect for the choice of professionals and Olympians. Compound bows are a little more ambiguous. While there are special designed target and hunting compound bows, often people will use good hunting compounds for target shooting, and that works fine. Starting on the lower end, we have the very popular Diamond Infinite Edge. A bow like this may cost around $400. The advantage of a bow like the Infinite Edge and similar bows is that they have a very large range of adjustment, meaning you can shoot a very low draw weight or a very high draw weight, making this a very accessible bow for many people. One of the problems if you're using a beginner level compound bow is that despite having a large range of adjustment, it's really only good in one particular draw weight bracket. Now the higher level compound bows will have a smaller range of adjustment, but they will be maximized in efficiency for that particular draw weight. These higher level bows like the Bowtech Boss will cost a lot, around $2,000. However, they are generally much better performers. They will shoot at much higher velocities, they are much more efficient, and there are far more customization options available. Going over to the target compound line, again there's some ambiguity as to which bows are specifically target and which bows are specifically hunting, and really they can be used for both purposes. In this case, the Hoyt Ruckus does come in both variants in terms of color scheme. Now, worth noting that you can find junior versions of certain bows like the Hoyt Ruckus. Junior versions are smaller in size, so they can be used by younger children. At the top end of the target compound, we have bows like the Hoyt Podium X Elite. As you can probably see, these bows are the pinnacle of engineering and design, boasting the best in performance, efficiency, balance, and customization. A bow like this may set you back around $2,000, and that's just for the bow. Getting excellent accessories like sights and release aids will also set you back hundreds of dollars. This is truly the best of bow technology. Of course, these descriptions are very general. It's very hard to be specific about particular bows or particular categories, but you probably get a general idea as to what kind of bow you can get in each of these lines. Of course, if you buy more than one bow, which is likely for most people, then you don't have to stick with one particular kind. People may have a hunting bow and a target bow. They may have a recurve bow and a compound bow. You don't have to pick one necessarily. But what if after all that you're still stuck? What if all you want is a bow and you don't really care what kind it is? If all you want is a bow to use, then I recommend the Takedown recurves. The most basic Takedown recurves look and function exactly the same, and they all cost under $200. For someone getting into archery with no guidance, this is the safest choice. It provides the easiest learning curve, and the skills you learn using this bow can carry over to any style of bow you might choose to use later on. There's a reason why these bows are standard for clubs for the beginner programs. One of the advantages is that you can find these bows in any store. If you can't find one particular model, it doesn't really matter. They mostly handle and look the same. So if your local store stocks a different brand or different model, just go with that. These are very straightforward buys, and you really can't go wrong with these bows if that's all you need. Again, these bows are the safest choices. If you don't know what you're getting, but you still really want a bow for yourself, then this is what you should be looking for. In the end, my advice to you is to choose what makes you happy. This concludes my introduction on how to choose your first bow. If you would like more information on how to order your first bow or how to set up your first bow, then check out the second and third videos in this series. This is New Sensei, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.